and like one of our projects is Karma Kitchen, which is like this pay it forward restaurant. And you know, you go into this restaurant, there's no prices on the menu, and then you find out your meal's been gifted to you by people that came before, and that everyone that's serving you is a volunteer, and that it's, you know, that it's just this, like, you can have seconds, you can have thirds, there's a kindness table with gifts that people have offered, and it's just this shift from consumption to contribution, right, or transaction to trust. And I remember volunteering there one day when I was in college and just feeling like, wow, you know, my job today is just to make people smile. And how it's such a simple thing. It's almost like, oh, that's really cute, you know, that that's what you're doing. Like, it's so simple and so ordinary that it's like, okay, sure, so that's a nice way to spend your time, but like, what do you really do, you know, for a living? Or what do you, like, how is this going to solve homelessness, right? Like, these things. But I remember at the end of that day feeling like I was so tired physically from serving waiting tables, doing different things, doing dishes, plating food, but my soul was so energized by a sense of oneness. And how I felt like my habits were changing in that process, right? Like, I noticed that whole week afterwards when I walked down the street, the way I looked at people changed. Rather than looking at people with distrust, like with a sense of barriers already up, I started to see them as, you know, when you spent a whole Sunday welcoming strangers as your family, right, into this restaurant and saying, how can I make your day? Like, they instantly become like your kin, right? And so it's hard not to let that carry forward out the door. And so I walk down the street and I'd see strangers and I'd feel like, wow, these are my family. and you know, I would start from trust rather than distrust. And that shifted just how I would hold myself and how I would approach people and what I thought was possible. And absolutely. I think all these little things, such simple things that are cute or, you know, like sweet, like that actually became like this, I felt like the secret sauce to like my smiles at work, you know. I would go into work and I would be like, these are my coworkers, this is my boss, these are my, you know, superiors, but like, we're all humans, right? And like, how can I make you smile? And absolutely. I think just having that mentality would really shift a lot of, you know, the stuff that we tend to get bogged down by.
Absolutely. So I suppose for you personally, you saw the benefits both internally and externally of that approach, which made you continue with it naturally, right?
I think it just felt natural and simple and also very native, right? Like very something that I would naturally, most people, it's just very human.
It's very human, that's exactly it, right? That's really powerful. And I think it's really interesting for me because it's so simple. There's not some kind of long process thing that we need to go through in order to do this. Actually, it's just a smile or something, right? And I suppose it's also that it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier around, you know, there's almost like this is our intention of doing something and this is the output or thing that we need to get from it, right? And those things are often quantifiable, right? Whereas these things almost aren't, right? And we almost don't see the impact and the ripples that these acts have going forward, right? Which I think is a really important kind of point. And again, it's just shifting that narrative of understanding that, maybe.
Well, and it's also like we live in certain narratives, right? And so I think we're trained to have tunnel vision for specific things just because of the systems we're a part of and the ways that we live. But I think some of our systems have, like when you're measuring certain impact or numbers or monetary amounts even, right? Like you miss so much of the other, like take like money for an example, right? When you're just focused on the monetary value of something, you miss so many other forms of value that are embedded in a situation, in a product, in a community, because you're just focusing on that one very narrow slice of the whole pie. And I think it's the same, like with anything we do, I think our culture has become so fragmented and disconnected and also so specialized that like we've innovated for efficiency rather than love, right? We've innovated for speed rather than our humanity.
Sure.
And so that misses things along the way, and because we don't have tools, we don't even have metrics to capture what those subtle forms of value are, what those invisible forms of value are that are not captured in our system as something that's of value. Like, we just find ourselves now in a culture that's...
we're focusing on those things and we're missing everything else, right?
Yeah. And we see the symptoms of that, right? But like, we don't, it's like, there's this other great quote by, people attribute it to Einstein. I don't know if he really said it, but I love the concept that you can't solve a problem with the same kind of thinking that created it. And so, we have this, like, our society operates on a certain kind of thinking. But how do we kind of, like, it by nature, it has these blind spots of all these other forms of value, right? That we're just totally letting drop by the wayside because we're not optimizing for them or we're not focusing on them. They're not even in our view because we don't see them in the periphery. And so